Sometimes we make sentences with two verbs that go together. They're connected beyond using conjunctions like and, or, but, and so on. We call these verb patterns. There are a few ways to connect such verbs, but most commonly we put to between the verbs, or add ing at the end of the second verb. English books usually have lists like these to tell you when to do one instead of the other. By the way, they call the second verb in each pair infinitives and gerunds and participles. But right now, let's just focus on to versus ing. Looking at the lists, you might notice that each says after certain verbs, referring to the first verb in the pair. What are these certain verbs, you ask? Let's take a look. That's a lot of verbs, and there are even more than the 120 listed here. Are students just supposed to memorize these? I've got a better way to remember this. Let's start with putting these verbs into groups. We'll go through some examples pretty quickly, but we'll revisit the conclusions at the end. We see that verbs about what you want go in the to group, while verbs of perception usually go in the ing group. Keep in mind that there are often exceptions, as with many things in English. Here, perception verbs that are less certain go into the left group. Verbs of opportunity, like deserve and afford, are also followed by to. But when you're reflecting upon something, perhaps by recalling it or just thinking about it, you typically use ing. If you're expecting something to happen, or you're trying to make it happen, these verbs are probably followed by to. This aligns with what other sources say about expressing purpose. However, there are some phrases that are followed by the verb ing. Yay, more exceptions, you might think. But let's take a closer look. If Alex plans to swim, or Alex plans on swimming, the meanings are the same. The difference between the two sets of verbs is that the phrases on the right include prepositions. In fact, you should almost always use ing after a verb phrase containing prepositions. More verbs that come before ing include start and continue and other words related to going through a process, or not going through the process by avoiding it or quitting it. Now, you might have noticed some words have been on both the left and the right pages. Words like stop. That's because you might use these words in different ways. For example, if you stop to smell the roses, that shows you intend to smell the flowers. On the other hand, if you stop smelling the roses, that means you finished the process of smelling them. Another way of thinking about it is that smell on the left happens for a short or limited time, but smelling on the right seems to have lasted a bit longer. It's pretty similar to comparing a simple tense to a continuous tense. For another example, Jane started to dance, but then she got distracted. This shows her intent, but it didn't last very long. Contrast with, Jane started dancing 4 years ago, and now she's entering a national competition. This time, we're not focused on the beginning, but rather on the entire process of dancing, which lasted a lot longer. Here's a different distinction. Let's use remember as an example. If you remember to lock the door, and then you remember locking the door, those are two very different things. On the left, you remind yourself to do something in the future. On the right, you recall doing something in the past. Similar distinctions can be made with forget and regret. Okay, let's move on. If you're going to encourage, allow, or forbid something, or otherwise influence someone, that might be expressed with either method. In fact, some of these words can be used both ways. There is a slight difference in meaning, and it depends on whether the context is limited or extended, or perhaps a better way to express it is specific versus general. If Dad forbids me to go to the haunted house this Halloween, he's forbidding a particular instance in the near future. But if Dad forbids going to the haunted house, then that's a general rule, and I'm never allowed to go. All right, our last group. The majority of the time we express a preference, the next verb needs to have ing, unless you're saying would like or would prefer. But even without the woulds, the rule is the same. I hate to cause trouble implies that you're reluctant to do a particular thing in the near future. But I hate causing trouble implies you often cause trouble and you feel bad about it. Similarly, I prefer to drink tea instead of coffee is about the beverage you're about to drink. But I prefer drinking tea instead of coffee states your usual preference. Two long lists of certain verbs can be daunting. While not every word fits nicely into a group, and some groups do have exceptions, we can use these groups to create rules of thumb. Sometimes it depends on how a verb is used. Notice we have some consistency here. The difference between desire and preference is that desires focus on the future, while preferences are generally true. Expressions of expectation and intent, or opportunity, also regard a specific thing that's about to happen. But you can't perceive the future, and you often reflect on the past. Finally, verbs about process are about more than just a single moment. This much shorter list of guidelines can help you remember when to use to and when to use ing.